Okay, let's talk about something that drives so many product teams crazy: accessibility. Specifically, that one nagging question: who's actually supposed to be doing it? It's like this giant puzzle, and when no one knows who owns which piece, well, things fall apart. And the people who pay the price are your users. So today, we're going to solve that puzzle.
Seriously, think about it right now. On your team, if a screen reader bug pops up, who does everybody turn to? The engineer? The designer? Do you get that awkward silence where everyone's just kind of looking around? If you don't have a crystal clear answer, you've just hit on the exact problem we're going to fix.
And that's where the chaos starts. It's the blame game when a deadline is missed. It's the bottleneck where one poor developer is suddenly expected to be an accessibility wizard and fix everything at the last minute. The result? Inaccessible products that just don't work for everyone. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. There's a playbook for this.
And that playbook comes straight from the W3C's Web Accessibility Initiative. It's called the Accessibility Roles and Responsibilities Mapping Framework. Yeah, it's a mouthful, so we'll just call it ARRM. Think of it as a simple decision tree that cuts through all the confusion and helps your team figure out exactly who owns what and when.
So, how does it work? Well, the whole system is built on just 3 levels of ownership. You've got your primary owner, that's the person who is ultimately on the hook. Then you have the secondary owner, who's helping get the work done. And finally, the contributor, who provides key input. That's it. This simple structure is the secret sauce.
Now, if you've ever worked in project management, this is probably going to look really familiar. The ARRM levels map almost perfectly to the classic RACI model. Your primary owner is the accountable one. The secondary owner is responsible for the hands-on work, and the contributor is consulted. It's a really nice, clean translation that makes this whole thing much easier to adopt. Okay, so the very first thing you have to do, the most critical step, is to figure out who the primary owner is for any given task. If you can get this one thing right, everything else just clicks into place. So let's walk through exactly how the ARRM decision tree helps us do that. And this brings us to the golden rule of the entire system. Are you ready? For any single task, there can be only one primary owner. Not a team, not 2 people, one. This is so important because it creates a single point of accountability. No more finger pointing, no more confusion. Just clarity.
All right, let's fire up the decision tree. The very first question to ask is, where did this task come from? Is it being driven by a high-level business need, a legal requirement, a core product feature?
If the answer is yes, then boom, you found your primary owner. It's the business analyst. We're talking about those big foundational decisions. Things like defining brand standards, making sure you're legally compliant with WCAG, or spelling out the basic functionality of a new feature. This stuff happens way at the beginning. Okay, but what if the task isn't about business requirements? We just move down to the next question in the tree. Is this task all about the words, the text, the media, the stuff that communicates information?
If that's the case, your primary owner is the content author. This is for anyone creating the actual content. You know, writing the text for a button, making sure a document has the right heading structure, whipping up a transcript for a video. If it involves words, it's probably owned by a content author.
So if it's not business and it's not content, we ask the next question. Is this task about the experience? Is it about how the product behaves, how it flows, how a user actually interacts with it?
And if it is, the UX designer is your primary owner. This is all about the architecture, the blueprints, before you even think about colors or fonts. We're talking wireframes, defining how a component should work, mapping out the main parts of a page, all that good UX stuff.
All right, moving down the line, we get to the look and feel. Is the task about how the product is presented visually, the aesthetics?
If the decision is purely about the visuals, then the visual designer is the primary owner. This is their world. Choosing color palettes with enough contrast, picking readable fonts, creating those pixel-perfect mock-ups, that's all on them.
And now, we arrive at the step where so much of the confusion usually lives. We ask, is this task about the actual code, the implementation?
You know, the W3C's own documentation calls out this common trap perfectly. So many teams just throw all accessibility work at the developers. But that's a huge mistake, because as we've just seen, most of the key decisions are actually made long before a single line of code gets written.
And here is the absolute key. A front-end developer is the primary owner only when the task is a decision made during implementation. Things like choosing the right semantic HTML tag for the job, or deciding which ARIA attribute to use. They are executing the design, not owning it. They're the master builders, bringing the architect's blueprints to life.
And finally, what about our QA folks? Is the task about testing? Well, while QA is absolutely critical for checking that everything works as it should, they're rarely the primary owner of an accessibility feature. Their job is to validate the work that everyone else did, not to make those initial calls on design or implementation.
So once you've identified that one single primary owner, the job's not quite done. You've got to build out the rest of the team. Who's going to support them? That's where your secondary owners and contributors come into play.
Let's break it down real simple. Your secondary owner is in the trenches, actively doing the work and helping make decisions. The contributor is more like an expert advisor. They're consulted for their input, maybe at the start of a task, but they aren't involved in the day-to-day work. One is a doer, the other is an advisor.
So, after all that, you might be asking, why go through this whole process? The answer is simple. It takes you from that reactive, confusing chaos we talked about to a place of proactive clarity where everyone knows their role. It totally changes the game.
And this is what you get for it. The who owns this debate? Over. Gone. Accessibility is now just part of the job from day one, not a last-minute panic. You get that crystal clear accountability, which leads to amazing collaboration. And the real prize? You just build better, more inclusive products that work for everyone. It's a huge win. So the playbook is right here. The W3C has laid it all out for us. The only question left is, what are you going to do with it? Think about your project right now. What's the very first accessibility task you could run through this decision tree? Start there. Go bring this clarity to your team.